Alright, guys, we're going to talk about question number 12 from section D, which will be the Parotidomasseteric region. We're going to use the anatomy locomotor theme book to discuss the topography. A lot of people don't like using it because they say it's too much information and it's detailed, but I believe that if you go over it a few times, it's really going to make sense, and I think it'll be really hard to forget because there's a system. So anyways, let's begin. First, let's talk about what the parotidomasseteric region actually holds. And that's in the name itself. It's going to hold the parotid gland, which is number 1, and it's going to hold the master. Okay, the parotid gland is going to lie in the master, and the master is going to originate from the zygomatic arch. It's going to originate from the maxilla, and it's going to insert into the coronary process of the mandible, and it will be innervated by the motor mascatory branch of the mandibular nerve. Now, right away, let's talk about what you can see from this picture. You can see this thing right here. That's going to be your Stenson's duct. Number 3 is your Stenson's duct. Basically, it's called your parotid duct, and it's going to travel anteriorly to the parotid gland, and it's going to begin to descend right in front of your buccal fat pad, which is number 4. Now, accompanying your Stenson's duct is going to be number 5, which is this red artery right here. That's going to be your transverse facial artery. Okay. What else can you see? Okay, well, let's talk about the parotid gland itself. The parotid gland is divided into a superficial and a deep part. Okay, and it's going to be divided by the parotid plexus. Okay, now the parotid plexus has 5 branches. You have your temporal, you have your maxillary, you have your buccal, you have your margin mandibular, and you have your cervical. Okay, there's 5 branches going in their corresponding directions. Now, if you were to follow number 11, which is the cervical branch of the parotid plexus, okay, if you let's look at another picture. If you go to page, I think it's page 359. If you go to page 359, you can see it in more detail. Now, if you look at number 8, okay, if you look at number 8 right here, that's going to be your cervical branch of your parotid plexus continuing down, and then you're going to see number 6, okay, coming out. That's going to be transverse cervical, and they're going to meet up and form the superficial cervical ansa. Okay? Now, let's go back. So we've talked about the Stenson's duct, the transverse facial artery, the buccal fat pad. We've talked about the cervical branch of the parotid plexus. We talked about how the parotid plexus divides the parotid gland into superficial and deep part. Let's go back and talk about something very important that I didn't really discuss. The parotid plexus branches within the parotid gland and then comes out anteriorly and superiorly, and it goes into the mimetic muscles. You see it's going here in the orbicularis oculi. It's going to go into its corresponding mimetic muscles. Now, let's go back to the cervical branch now. Now, traveling along with the cervical branch of the parotid plexus, you have your retromandibular artery. Your retromandibular vein. Now, although you cannot see it, the retromandibular vein will drain into your external jugular. Anteriorly to the parotid gland, you have these vessels right here, 13 and 14. Those are going to be your facial vessels. Now, what's important here is the facial artery, because it's going to give off the angular artery, okay, and that's going to be its terminal branch. the angular artery is going to continue all the way to the medial corner of the eye. But before it does, it's going to give off the inferior labial and the superior labial branch. And let's look a little bit higher. Okay, in this area, let's talk about, okay, you're going to have number 6, you're going to have your superficial temporal artery, okay? Just when asked about the superficial temporal artery, the professor would ask you, will you just name off its branches? So I have a acronym that was taught to me by Niju Thomas. It's called Zona pellucida, females testing a man's power. So Z, you're going to have zygomatico-temporal, P for parietal, F for frontal, Zona pellucida, females testing, T, transverse facial, which we already saw before. Testing A, you're going to have the anterior M, you're going to have the middle temporal, and P, you're going to have the branch of the parotid. Okay, so those are all the branches for the superficial temporal artery. You can see number 20, you can see that's going to be auricular temporal nerve. That's going to innervate the external acoustic meatus, the tympanic membrane, and the skin of the temple. And what else can you see? You can see number 21, which would be classified as a superficial parotid lymph node. If you guys remember, in lymph nodes, you have your superficial and deep parotid lymph nodes. Now, the question is, what if you were to remove the superficial part of the parotid gland? Now, you would mainly just visualize 3 things. Let's go here. You would be able to visualize the parotid plexus more clearly. You'd be able to visualize the retromandibular vein, and you'd also be able to visualize, sometimes it's seen, number 24, that's called your accessory parotid gland. And guys, that pretty much covers up your parotidomasseteric region. That should be definitely enough to answer any question about that area. Okay?